Victor Alton was the kind of man who could buy silence with the flick of a pen. A billionaire molded by ambition, precision, and complete control. His mansion stood on the hills like a marble monument to perfection, untouchable and aloof, just like him. He didn't tolerate surprises, didn't believe in excuses, and certainly didn't believe in the intentions of others. Since the tragic passing of his wife, his heart had frozen in a permanent winter, and the walls around him had only grown thicker. He lived by routine, built his empire on systems, and ran his house like a machine. The staff knew better than to disturb him, and he expected quiet obedience. Then came Clara, a soft-spoken maid from a distant rural town who arrived with impeccable references and a quiet desperation in her eyes that she never spoke of. She was the type who worked like a shadow efficient, almost invisible, never causing a stir. Victor didn't know much about her, nor did he care. As long as the house was spotless and the meals were on time, he paid no attention. But slowly, subtly, something began to disturb his perfect order. His head of security mentioned unusual nighttime activity. It was subtle, easily dismissed till the third night.
Oh.
Clara had been seen opening the fridge in the middle of the night, not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Nothing was missing, no food stolen, but there she was, again and again, standing before the glowing refrigerator door in the dead of night, just staring. Victor watched the footage himself, her tired figure illuminated in cold white light, her hand twitching forward, then retreating, her expression unreadable. He tried to rationalize it, but the suspicion gnawed at him. Why would she be doing? This curiosity turned to distrust. To a man like Victor, who saw the world in profits and losses, even unspoken gestures could mean hidden agendas. He convinced himself that she was planning something, maybe casing the kitchen for theft, or worse, using the home for something clandestine. He confronted her in the morning. His voice was sharp, his tone final. "Why are you opening the fridge at night?" he demanded. Clara stood frozen, her eyes wide, her lips trembling as she tried to respond. "Sir, I wasn't taking anything. But he cut her off, convinced that her hesitation was guilt. "Do you think I built all this by trusting the wrong people?" he snapped. "Pack your things. You're fired." She didn't argue. She just nodded quietly, tears threatening to fall but never allowed to drop. She walked away like a whisper leaving a storm. That afternoon, as the other staff looked on in silence, Clara left with only a small duffel bag and an envelope she placed quietly on the edge of Victor's desk. The house returned to its usual silence, but something in Victor didn't. The fridge remained untouched, but the question stayed. What had she been doing? Why hadn't she explained? Why had she looked more heartbroken than guilty? He told himself it didn't matter, that he was right to remove uncertainty from his home. But late at night, when he passed the kitchen, faint echo of her presence haunted the walls. Days passed, then weeks. The envelope remained unopened. Under a pile of ignored paperwork, Victor moved on, nor tried to, but the image of Clara standing in that kitchen, looking not like a thief but like someone, desperately looking for something that wasn't food, refused to leave him. And as much as he wanted to forget, a part of him knew deep down that whatever he had seen wasn't about the fridge. It was about something far more human, something he hadn't had the courage or compassion to see. Victor had always believed that the past belonged behind him, boxed up like old files, never to be reopened. But Clara's quiet departure had left something open, an itch in his conscience, a whisper in his gut that something was deeply wrong. Days turned into weeks, and while the mansion remained pristine, something in him did not. It began as a small thought each morning when he passed the fridge, the same one she had stood before so many nights. He would open it, stare into it like she had, and try to understand what she could have been looking for. He tried to push the memory aside, telling himself she was just another employee who had crossed a line. But late one rainy afternoon, clearing a cluttered corner of his study during a rare bout of boredom, he found the envelope she had left behind. He had seen it before, meant to throw it out, but for some reason never had. Now it sat there, in his hands like a ticking time bomb from the past. Something inside him hesitated, unsure of what he might find. He tore it open, unfolded the creased paper, and read the words in Clara's fragile handwriting, words that would destroy his self-assurance and rip apart everything he thought he knew. "Mr. Alton, I'm sorry I couldn't say this in person. I was ashamed. I know how things looked. I know it seemed strange. But I wasn't trying to steal from you. I was never hungry. My son was. He's 6. His name is Jonah. He's in the hospital downtown, malnourished. I had no money left to feed him properly. I took this job hoping to save up quickly, but the bills were too much. I looked at the fridge every night because I was trying to get the courage to ask you for help. I thought maybe, if you knew, maybe you'd offer food, or even just a little money. But I was scared. I was scared you'd see me as a burden. You don't know me, and I didn't want pity, just hope. I'm sorry I couldn't explain. I'm sorry I failed you and him." The words stabbed through him like knives. His hands trembled as he reread the note over and over again, as if repetition would somehow change the meaning, but it didn't. Clara hadn't been a thief. She'd been a mother in quiet desperation. And he had thrown her out without a second thought. The shame he felt in that moment was something he'd never known before, not even during the loss of his wife. This was different. This was the shame of seeing himself in a true light. A man, too, blinded by wealth to see humanity. A man who fired a mother for standing in front of a fridge, begging in silence. He couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't think straight. The next morning, he sent his driver to the hospital downtown, the one Clara had mentioned. It took hours of questions, paperwork, and persistence before they located the right floor, the right room. But Clara wasn't there. Jonah wasn't there. They had been transferred out weeks ago after the hospital bills went unpaid. He could have prevented that, but he didn't. His heart pounded. He ordered his assistant to dig into every record. Employment file, emergency contact, anything that could help him find her. It took 3 days. 3 long days before they got a lead. Clara was now working in a diner on the edge of town during the day and cleaning another home by night. He didn't tell anyone who he was when he walked into that diner, sat at a booth in the corner, and watched her moving between tables. Thinner than he remembered, her eyes tired, her frame hunched from exhaustion. He saw a different woman than the one he fired, not because she had changed, but because he finally knew what he had failed to see. When she noticed him, she froze, a plate nearly slipping from her hands. "Mr. Alton," she said, her voice barely audible. "Why are you here?" Her eyes already brimming with dread, as if expecting more punishment. "Clara," he said softly, something unfamiliar in his voice, "I read your letter." And just like that, the walls crumbled. She turned away, wiping her eyes, overwhelmed by embarrassment, by the pain of being seen in her lowest place. Asked to sit, she hesitated, then nodded. What followed was not an apology, was a reckoning. He told her he had made a terrible mistake, that his inability to see past his own assumptions had cost her and her son dearly. She didn't say much, only listened. When he asked about Jonah, her voice cracked as she explained the child was now at a charity clinic, getting the bare minimum treatment. "He needs more, but I can't." She stopped herself. She was always stopping herself, always cutting short her truth. Thinking the world didn't want to hear it, but Victor did. For the first time in a long time he did. He asked her to come with him. She refused at first, unsure if this was guilt or pity. But he insisted not to fix his conscience, but because it was simply the right thing to do. In the days that followed, Victor made arrangements for Jonah's full treatment at the Best L alone. He felt human. One evening, as they all sat around the dinner table, Jonah asked innocently, "Uncle V, why did you save us?" Victor looked at Clara, then back at the boy, "Because I didn't." The first time, and that's something I'll never forget. That night, after Jonah went to bed, Clara whispered, "Thank you." Victor shook his head. "No, Clara, thank you for showing me what I couldn't see." From that day forward, he began funding a program that supported single mothers with emergency housing and childcare, all in his wife's name. But the truth was, it was Clara who inspired it. Her silence had spoken louder than any speech. and her strength had turned his coldest judgment into the warmest transformation. The man who once fired a maid for standing in front of a fridge had been brought to his knees by the truth that sometimes people aren't asking for help out loud. Sometimes they're just standing there, waiting to be seen.